There's something that I've been wanting to bring up on the channel for a long time, and I hesitate because it reveals something about me, and it reveals, it's kind of a description of moments in which I am not the person I want to be. Sometimes there are situations in which I am not able to be my higher self, to be a compassionate person, to be a forgiving person, the kind of person that understands that everybody makes mistakes and that we're all just trying to get through our day. And what I've noticed lately is that these moments mostly happen when people stop their car in the middle of the damn road. What is wrong with you? I know that everyone complains about people driving all the time. I get that, right? Like, I complain about it. We all complain, oh, isn't traffic crazy? Oh, these people on the road, they're crazy. This is something else. This is different. And I don't know if it's just because I live in a tourist town or if it's because of the particular places that I go, but it has been a marked uptick this year of people stopping their car in the middle of the road. Don't do that. It's dangerous. It's a road. But the reason I'm bringing it up now, the thing that really gets to me now is I've started noticing, and I don't know if it's just confirmation bias. Once you notice it once, then every time it happens, you notice it again. But people stop in the road and then they reverse. Specific examples. I'm coming down Amboy Road here in Asheville. If you're local, you know this place. You got to take the long ass ramp up to I-240, and there's no way, once you're on that ramp, there's no way to turn around. And so reasonable, normal people, if they take that ramp by mistake, they just continue and they get on 240, and because we live in a time where we have the most powerful navigation tools ever devised by man in our pockets, you just make a U-turn down the road. Except for some people who stop in the road, in the interstate on-ramp, and put their car in reverse. This is not just a rant. This is a cry for help, because if something doesn't change, I'm going to murder someone. Have you ever been on the scene of a fatal car crash? Because I have, and let me tell you, it sucks. These people are going to cause more of those. This is not a soccer field. This is not a city park. This is a place where people die all the time. It is not outside of the realm of possibility that your stupidity will cause people to lose their lives. My kid goes to physical therapy, so maybe this is location bias, because we're going into the medical park, right? So there's all these old people and they don't know where they're going and they don't handle Google Maps very well. Whatever, I can understand all that. That's cool. But then they stop in the road and they reverse toward me, who is driving forward. Listen, Gramps, there's a traffic circle 100 yards ahead. It's literally made for turning around. Why do we even have to have this conversation? What? This is not the whole, oh, everyone should use why don't people use their turn signals? No, at least when you're using your turn signal, you're still moving forward in the road. You're not moving against traffic. I am sorry for whatever condition has brought you to the medical park. I truly empathize with you. But if you reverse in the middle of the road and I slam on my brakes to avoid hitting you and someone hits me from behind, you better hope it kills me. Welcome to the Gribbly's Folly Sunday Antisocial Hour, that time each week when I smoke my pipe and complain about humanity while answering all of its questions. And if you are a piece of humanity with a question for me, leave it in the comments down below with the hashtag AskGribbs, and I will answer any question. I will put it to rest. Big questions, small questions, personal questions, existential questions. I have all the answers. I know that the first question you're gonna have for me is, Gribbs, why aren't you smoking a pipe? You just said this is the time when you smoke a pipe. Well, I'm not smoking a pipe because a certain blend, which shall at this point remain nameless, though I will eventually name it, a certain blend gave me tongue bite. As you noticed last week, I ordered a bunch of tobaccos, had a bunch of different tobaccos, and I smoked one of the blends, and now my tongue feels like the Joker's face from the 90s era Batman movie. It's very unfortunate. I was looking forward to trying all those blends, and now I have to take the dreaded hiatus of shame after you've bitten your tongue so bad it feels like there's a steel trap. You know, I read a lot of stuff about it's been a long time since I have suffered from actual tongue bite. The difference, I think, that gets glossed over among pipe smokers is there is tongue burn, where your tobacco burns too hot and is steamy and it burns your tongue. And then there's tongue bite, which is a chemical burn. And I don't know what has changed about my body chemistry, but I like blends I didn't used to like, and I don't like blends I used to like, and apparently I'm now susceptible to tongue bite. So I'm taking a few days off. That's no problem. Everything is fine. As a tobacco user, of course, I am steadfastly committed to enjoying all of my vices in moderation. Speaking of moderation, Timber Drifter, I want you to know that I even looked at a gas station, which of course is the Southern Food Nexus, and I could not find single purchase Yoo-Hoos or moon pies. So I don't think I'm going to pursue the crate of moon pie and 4 gallon of Yoo-Hoo idea. I hate to disappoint. Let's get to your questions, shall we? Robert Dixon asks Gribbs, did you find lip balm the best for restoring the shine to all components of a pipe for prolonged periods of time? Beeswax main ingredient. I just used beeswax. I am suspicious of lip balm, and I don't know. Now I really want to try this, actually. I want to A-B a lip balm pipe. But yeah, back in the day, I had a bar of beeswax, and I would just rub that on my buffing wheel. I mean, I would turn the wheel and get it buffing, and then I would buff the pipe with the wheel that had the wax. That's how you use a buffing wheel. I missed that buffing wheel. There was like some shady shit that went down with that buffing wheel. I borrowed it from someone that may have stolen it. I was completely above board in the matter. I returned it immediately when the cops knocked on the door. Alex DeGennaro, which has your username changed? It used to be Alex DeGennaro, and now it's Alexander Gennaro 8596. What happened there? Yeah, I remember when you restored pipes. I bought the custom built you said you really want. I remember that custom built. Damn. I had a custom built that there are so many pipes. There's so many pipes that came through my fists. I won't say hands because I gripped them like the treasures that they were, and then I let them go out into the world, and I did take pictures. And honestly, that's okay. I just changed my desktop background to a picture of one of the Savinelli octagon, the one with the 8 sides. That's my now desktop background. The pipe is like $150. I don't have $150 to spend on a pipe, so I don't think I'll buy it. But man, it's sexy. But I do get most of the dopamine that I would get from holding it, and that's not true. I get some of the dopamine from looking at that picture on my desktop background. Collapse Experiment asks Gribbs, how did you watch the X-Files and later trust the government during COVID? Who said I trusted the government during COVID? I generally think that anything the government says is probably the opposite of what is actually true. Certainly in intent. Now, if the government comes out and says, hey, we spent X amount of dollars on X project, I mean, I think that's probably true, but we intended to do good by spending this much money on this project. No, you didn't. What I trusted during COVID was I trusted 2 things. One, the medical community was pretty adamant about a few things, and I have lots of friends in the medical community, and I talked to them about it and said, hey, should I trust this information? And they all said, yeah. So I asked people that I knew personally, so I trusted them. They backed up, in some cases, what the government was saying. I trusted that masking and social distancing worked because that's common goddamn sense. I did not trust any of the numbers that the government put out in terms of the, here's the spike, here's the valley, and I didn't trust any of that. That it was all national figures on localized epidemics. I trusted that whatever Donald Trump said was emphatically dishonest. In fact, I didn't really worry about COVID. If you'll remember that February, I did not worry about COVID until, what was his name? Kudlow? Larry Kudlow, director of the National Economic Council, on February 25th, 2020 said, in terms of containing the spread of COVID, I won't say it's airtight, but it's pretty close to airtight. That was the moment I knew we were all in deep shit.
Seriously, I wasn't concerned at all until the Trump administration, when Kudlow came out and said that we have it almost airtight contained. When people in positions of power assert things about themselves or their own achievements, assume the opposite is true. So when someone comes out and says, oh, we've got this thing contained, they don't have it contained. In fact, it's not going to be contained.
I'm looking at the story now. He added that while the outbreak is a human tragedy, it will likely not be an economic tragedy. At the moment, there are no supply disruptions out there yet. This is Trump's National Economic Council director. Oh, like most things Trump and COVID that age like fine milk. So liars are useful in that you can follow what they're saying and know at least what's not true. And the fact that Trump was coming out and saying this is no big deal, that pretty much told me it was a big deal. It's a touchy one. Ask Gribbs from Collapse Experiment again. I'm going to put all of his questions together, I think. What really happened during the 2017 Las Vegas shooting? Is the official narrative under question? I am reading, I Googled Las Vegas shooting conspiracy. I don't know why we wouldn't. I mean, there's footage. There's like videos from the event. I remember watching those videos. I remember, are you talking about the bump stock thing? I remember immediately, because I have been around bump stocks being fired. I remember immediately thinking that that person, that individual who is clearly mentally disturbed, is using a bump stock to achieve that rate of fire because it varied. And I remember thinking this was only a matter of time until something like this happened. I mean, mass shootings happen all the time, right? Totally normal. But this kind of mass shooting was frankly well thought out in terms of producing mass casualties, in terms of hitting high scores. I think that's what some of these shooters are. I hate talking about this. I was at my kid's school back before summer, and he was doing a school play, and so I went there to watch him in the school play, and that was all well. And actually, the play was terrible. It's a horrible play. So I'm standing there in the gym, and I'm me being me, I'm keeping a watchful eye on things. And all the exterior doors were unlocked. There was no police presence until a dad, one of the students' fathers, showed up, who happened to be a sheriff's deputy, and he just sat in the bleachers like everybody else. And so yeah, I was paying attention to everyone coming and going through these doors, and I thought, someone comes in here with an AR-15 and they're all tacked out. What am I gonna do about it? I'm a big dude. I could use my body weight to knock this person over. Although if you watch videos, and I unfortunately do watch these videos, if you watch videos of people attempting that against someone with an AR-15, we spent a lot of time in the gun community. I don't consider myself a member anymore, but spent a lot of time talking about how underpowered the AR-15 is. But I have seen multiple examples in watching these horrible videos of large dudes running toward an attacker, and they just go down. They don't make it to the attacker. And you think, oh, well, adrenaline, and oh, I'm a big guy, and I got a lot of mass. It doesn't work that way. Sake of argument, let's say I run toward the dude and I knock him down, and I pick up his AR-15. What the hell do I do then? Because now you're in an active shooter situation, and you're the guy with the AR-15. So when the cops come through, you're dead. So what do? You just shoot the guy and drop the gun? Like, isn't that murder? On the other hand, is there a jury in this country that would convict you of murder in a situation like that? Probably there is, actually. So I don't know, but it's something I've given thought to, which I am a person that tends to think about horrible things, but it does kind of show you where we are in society, where you do need to ask yourself these questions before you go to a big event. So I don't know what really happened in Vegas. I have no reason to question that Stephen Paddock was just some mentally deranged asshole and he did what they said he did. Certainly I don't feel that there is compelling evidence for multiple shooters. This is the other thing. I grew up in the mountains, shooting guns in the mountains. Echoes are a thing. And so when people on a recording say, oh, there's clearly multiple shooters here because we can hear all these echoes. No, there's not. Like, there's plenty of situations in which you fire a weapon and you hear that reverberation for a long time, maybe more than once. Now, I think there is some question, what really happened in this guy's mind to bring him to that state? I don't care. I don't care. I mean, what happened in Adam Lanza's mind? What happened in Klebold and Harris's minds? This is a conversation that we should be having, but about any specific individual, especially someone about whom we know so little. We don't know a lot about Stephen Paddock. I don't know. I don't want to speculate. Labs experiment asks Gribbs, if Bigfoot and Dogman had a child, what would it be called? Big dog baby. Big baby dog. Big man foot dog. Howard asks Gribbs. I love this one. Do you have any thoughts on manstrating? I was listening to the Dana Loesch show on the radio. I don't know who that is. A bit on manstrating. What is manstrating? I had to Google it, but I assumed I knew what you were referring to. It's this idea that men, as well as women, have a hormonal cycle that lasts 28 days, and I think this came up because of the full moon thing we were talking about last time. I would love for that to be a thing. Because come on, I want an excuse to be irrational and upset and like I want to be able to snip and snipe at the people around me without having to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I should be responsible for my actions." Not that there are any women in my life that ever use that excuse. That is, I think, generally a stereotype that probably isn't borne out in this day and age. But I think that on one hand, you don't want to say women are irrational because of this hormonal thing that they go through every month, and then on the other hand, you don't want to minimize what they go through every month. It's a thing that men don't have to deal with. But I think there is some scientific evidence that says that men do have hormonal cycles, and perhaps it's sympathetic with women's hormonal cycles, or perhaps it's because of the moon, or who knows. But I have heard that my whole life. I've heard that there's scientific backing. I Googled a little bit, and there is some scientific backing. Whether or not it is what actually motivates our behaviors, or if it's a placebo effect, I don't know. There are certainly times when I feel more emotional than others, but it usually has to do with something other than my hormones. Men are lucky that we don't have entire bodily processes that stop and start based on hormones that are only delivered for a certain amount of our lives. I think that we don't even understand the implications of all that. And of course, there are things that women don't understand about us. And so wouldn't it be cool if we could, I think this thing is like meant as a jab, like, oh, Max is being bitchy because he can't smoke his pipe for a week. Like, he must be manstrating. Could we turn the tables on that and say, hey, I'm a dude and society doesn't really like for me to express my emotions, so I have an excuse now. We're not done here, but we do need to change a venue. Did I get the editing right? Did I get it? Video production is not my thing. So, I had a little bit of change of venue. It's a little bit later in the week, and my tongue is it's not all the way healed. It's definitely a lot better, but it's still there. So, just a few puffs off this one, then I'll go back to healing or whatever. Smoking Old Limey Bastard in my Missouri Meerschaum hardwood. If I could refinish pipes, I would buy a bunch of these and rusticate them just like this one. I really love this pipe. So lightweight, easy to smoke. Anyway, Wayne Jehoon McCready. I don't know how to say your name. I don't know how to say that, but I promise I am not butchering the pronunciation on purpose. Jaune McCready says, I have to say, loving the camera work and editing on these videos. Thank you so much. I would love to say that it's like from an effort to up my game, but it's mostly just that my microphone on my phone died. Enjoy the production value until I get a new phone. Then he or she also says, what the heck with the full moons and that random right-hand whisker? Yeah, I know. This is why I don't try, I'd never strive for well-produced videos. No one wants to see my face in high detail. But since I was in my early 20s, my beard has slowly been going gray, but now, like, it started here, and then it, like, caught up over here, and the gray patches are, like, trying to meet in the middle. And I get these weird, like, gray whiskers that they're like fiber optic cables, like they transmit light, and it is really distracting. But if I allowed that to bother me, then I would have to allow all the other flaws on my entire person to bother me, and I just don't have that kind of time. It's a good thing I'm bald. I mean, it would just be a gray mop, and no one wants that. Anyway, yeah, I'm pleased with the production value, and it is more fun to actually make something that looks good in the end. I mean, as good as it can with me in it. Les Brady commented on the last video. By the way, Les is one of my top tier patrons over at Patreon. Y'all should go check it out. $3 a month. You don't get more pipe content, by the way. It's all photography stuff. It's like actual art. Whereas this is leisure. Anyway, Les left a story about not knowing how to sign a check, because we were talking about how you need a class in high school that just teaches you how to do the basic things that every human being in this country has to do. And so, in response to that, Les, I want to share my most embarrassing moment. At least the most embarrassing moment I can think of in relation to your story. And so here's what happened. I went to college at a fancy private school. It didn't work out. And went to college at a fancy private school, and my parents made a big deal about it, and they took me down there and they dropped me off and they said, hey, we put $1,000 in your checking account. Oh, by the way, we got you a checking account and we put $1,000 in it. And I thought I was rich. I was like, I played it cool. But in my head, I'm like, $1,000. So the first thing I did is I went out and I bought myself a suit, because this was a very snooty school and it had like ceremonies and stuff that everyone was expected to go to. I went downtown to I won't say the name of the town. I went to downtown Peach Hole, South Carolina, and I went to the tailor. There was like this old tailor there. He'd been there for 400 years, and I had a suit tailored. And at the time, it was the 90s. That was only like $150. Anyway, the next day I started going to these ceremonies. I was the only one wearing a suit, and then that was like the only ceremony all semester. Nicest suit I ever owned. Has nothing to do with the embarrassing part. So then I had a computer. My parents also bought me I guess you could call it a computer, and it was an E-Machine desktop, if you remember those. And at the time, I mean, that was respectable. And so, but I didn't have an Ethernet card because it was the 90s, and who knew what that was? So I asked around on campus, and I found like one of the tech students who was willing to sell me an Ethernet card and install it for me. I can't believe I paid someone to install an Ethernet card in a computer, but I did. And he came over to my dorm room, and I was like trying to act cool, because back home I was the guy that knew about computers. Nobody in my town could read or use a computer, and so I was the guy that was smart about these things. And so I was like trying to impress him with my tech knowledge, which was obviously not impressive to him. And then he handed me a product. It was we were talking about this Ethernet card he was putting in, and he handed me a product and said, hey, this is the new something, something, something. And I said, oh, cool. And we were standing there at my desk with my computer open. I said, oh, cool. And I started opening it, and he was like, no, don't open it. And I looked at it, and it was not an Ethernet card. It was like a processor. It was like some sort of chip for a motherboard processor. I don't know. And then it was the 90s. It was probably made out of matchsticks. But the point was, it was a very expensive piece of hardware and he was like bragging. And I was trying to brag about how much I knew about computers, and he had handed me this thing, and I just thought it was my Ethernet card that he was in, so I tried to open it. So I realized I had made a faux pas, and that felt bad. And then he installed my Ethernet card, which he like took out of his back pocket or whatever, it wasn't in shrink wrap or anything. And then I paid him with a check, and he left. The next day, I'm walking across campus, and I run into the guy, and he's like, hey, Max, that check you wrote me, you forgot to sign it. I might have had more embarrassing moments, but I've never had any moments in which I felt like such a complete idiot. I wasn't in, well, okay, I was 18 years old, so everyone's an idiot when they're 18s, but I wasn't any more idiotic than the normal 18-year-old dude. But it was the second check I had ever written in my entire life, the first being for the suit. They never called to say I didn't sign the check for the suit, so whatever. That was in what, like late August? And so by mid-September, I went to the ATM and tried to withdraw money, and it was like, insufficient funds. $1,000 just gone. I mean, that's what happens when you buy a suit and an Ethernet card and, well, textbooks. But I didn't know that would happen. I had no concept of the idea that I might go through $1,000 in under a month. Oh, also there was this great moment when it was still summer. It was definitely still August, and I put my key in the door of my car that I needed to do everything, and the key just broke right in the door. So I had to go to a locksmith, and I wrote him a check too. And I don't know if that one ever went through, but I got back in my car. Speaking of the ill effects on the body of tobacco, A3006 says, "Are you ready to try Elizabethan again? Are you ready to give me $100,000? Because the answer to those questions is the same." Finally, Stephen Roberts asks Gribbs, "How long have you been tying flies?" How long have I been tying flies, or how long have I been tying good flies? I tied my first flies, I think, in the spring of 2017. I will post pictures, embarrassing pictures of them here. And it took me quite a while to get up to speed because I didn't really sit down with anyone to teach me proper proportions and stuff like that. I got the basics pretty quickly, but there's a difference between a bug that will fish and a bug that looks like it would fish. And if you want to make the latter, it does take some practice, and it takes a personal mentor. You can't just watch videos. You've got to be there with someone. And so later on in that year, I went and sat down at my guru's side at his fly tying bench, and I learned more that night than I probably learned. I don't know. You learn a lot from YouTube videos, but there's just something about sitting in the room with someone who's been tying for 50 years. And then since then, it's been a process of reducing those skills and the complexity of the fly that I use. And so I like to think now that I tie the bare minimum possible to make a fish bite. And I don't waste a lot of time with lots of exotic materials or anything like that. I mean, you've seen my dirt sheet fly tying video, and all my stuff now is even simpler than that. That's it for this week's Sunday Antisocial. Leave me your Ask Gribbs question in the comments below, and I will answer it next week or whenever I make a video. But hey, I'm on a roll, right? I'm doing pretty good. So yeah, see you next week. Keep the ends out for the ties that bind.